As NATO approaches its 75th anniversary on April 4th, the alliance stands at a pivotal crossroads, emblematic of both its historical successes and the contemporary challenges that test its resilience. The ongoing geopolitical tension surrounding Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine underscores a critical juncture for NATO, as the outcome will significantly influence its credibility as a deterrent against aggression. In a recent news conference, Russian President Vladimir Putin reiterated the folly of attacking NATO countries, branding it a crazy idea. Yet he simultaneously issued stark warnings against Western influence in Ukraine. This delicate balance of power and diplomacy will shape the future of global security. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, was established on April 4, 1949, as a collective defense alliance to counter the Soviet Union's influence in Europe during the early Cold War era. Comprised initially of 12 Western nations, NATO's primary purpose was to provide mutual defense against aggression, thereby ensuring peace and stability in the region. Following the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, NATO shifted its focus from a static defense posture to a broader security strategy that included crisis management, cooperative security, and partnerships with former adversaries. The alliance expanded its membership to include several former Warsaw Pact countries and Soviet republics, embracing the principle that European security should be inclusive and cooperative. Key expansions included Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic in 1999, marking the first former Eastern Bloc countries to enter the alliance. This was followed by the addition of 7 more countries in 2004, including the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Albania and Croatia joined in 2009, and North Macedonia in 2020, bringing NATO's membership to 30 countries. One of the most significant post-Cold War crises between NATO and Russia occurred in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine. This act was widely condemned by NATO and the international community as a violation of international law and Ukraine's sovereignty. In response, NATO increased its military presence in Eastern Europe, implemented economic sanctions against Russia, and reinforced its commitment to defending its member states. Prior to these tensions, NATO and Russia had sought to build a cooperative relationship. The NATO-Russia Founding Act, signed in 1997, established the NATO-Russia Council, NRC, to facilitate dialogue and cooperation on security issues. Despite these efforts, relations were often strained by NATO's eastward expansion and differing strategic interests. Another flashpoint occurred in 2008 when Russia invaded Georgia, leading to a brief war. The conflict resulted in Russia recognizing the independence of 2 breakaway regions, Abkhazia and South Ossetia, further straining relations with NATO, which supported Georgia's territorial integrity. Today, the ongoing conflict in Ukraine epitomizes the tense and complex relationship between NATO and Russia. NATO's support for Ukraine through military aid and political backing is seen by Russia as a direct challenge to its sphere of influence. This geopolitical friction is a crucial test for NATO's ability to uphold its founding principles of collective defense and deterrence against aggression in the 21st century. As NATO celebrates its 75th anniversary, its role as the most successful military alliance in history is both commemorated and scrutinized against the backdrop of contemporary global security challenges. The alliance's future credibility hinges on its response to Russia's actions in Ukraine and its ability to adapt to an evolving security landscape. Russian President Vladimir Putin's objectives in Ukraine are multifaceted, reflecting a blend of historical grievances, strategic imperatives, and a desire to reassert Russia's influence on the global stage. Central to Putin's ambitions is the reintegration of Ukraine into Russia's sphere of influence, which he views as essential for maintaining Russian dominance in Eastern Europe and countering Western encroachment. Putin seeks to prevent Ukraine from aligning with Western institutions, particularly NATO and the European Union, which he perceives as direct threats to Russian security and sovereignty. Russia's military strategy in Ukraine has involved a combination of conventional warfare, hybrid tactics, and psychological operations aimed at destabilizing the Ukrainian government and sowing discord within Ukrainian society. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 was executed through a rapid and covert military operation, leveraging local pro-Russian sentiments and unmarked troops to seize control with minimal bloodshed. Following this, Russia supported separatist movements in eastern Ukraine, providing military aid, training, and direct intervention to sustain the conflict and create frozen conflict zones that hinder Ukraine's stability and integration with the West. Since the full-scale invasion in February 2022, Russia has employed a strategy of overwhelming force, targeting key infrastructures and attempting to encircle and capture major cities. However, this campaign has faced significant resistance from Ukrainian forces, who have benefited from extensive NATO training and support. Politically, Putin has sought to justify the invasion by invoking historical claims protecting Russian-speaking populations and countering what he describes as NATO's aggressive expansion. Putin perceives NATO's expansion as a profound security threat to Russia. Since the end of the Cold War, NATO has extended its membership eastward, incorporating several former Warsaw Pact countries and Soviet republics. This expansion has been viewed by Moscow as a strategic encirclement aimed at diminishing Russian influence and threatening its borders. The integration of countries like Poland, the Baltic states, and most notably Ukraine into NATO's security framework is seen as unacceptable by the Kremlin. NATO's support for Ukraine, including military training, equipment, and financial aid, has further fueled Putin's apprehensions. Initiatives like the Comprehensive Assistance Package, CAP, introduced in 2016, and its subsequent enhancements at the 2022 Madrid Summit and 2023 Vilnius Summit have significantly bolstered Ukraine's defense capabilities. These measures include cyber defense, logistics, and countering hybrid warfare, demonstrating NATO's commitment to strengthening Ukraine's resilience against Russian aggression. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine has triggered the deepest crisis in Moscow's relations with the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Putin has frequently warned of the catastrophic risks of a direct conflict between Russia and NATO, suggesting that such a scenario could bring the world perilously close to World War III. Despite these threats, he has not indicated a willingness to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, though the specter of nuclear escalation remains a potent element of his rhetoric. Western leaders, such as French President Emmanuel Macron, have contemplated the possibility of deploying ground troops in Ukraine, though this remains a contentious and divisive issue among NATO allies. While some countries, particularly in Eastern Europe, support more direct intervention, others remain cautious, emphasizing the risks of a broader conflict with Russia. In response to Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, NATO has significantly ramped up its military support and strategic deployments to bolster Ukraine's defense capabilities and deter further Russian aggression. This support has been multifaceted, including the provision of military aid, the deployment of additional troops, and the establishment of new defense plans. NATO allies have delivered unprecedented levels of military aid to Ukraine, comprising advanced weaponry, training, and financial assistance. This has included systems like anti-tank guided missiles, artillery, and air defense mechanisms. The assistance has been critical in enabling Ukrainian forces to mount a robust defense against Russian advances. Following the invasion, NATO activated its defense plans, deploying over 40,000 troops along with significant air and naval assets to the eastern part of the alliance. These forces are under direct NATO command, supplemented by tens of thousands more from national deployments. To further reinforce its eastern flank, NATO established 4 new multinational battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia, augmenting the existing battle groups in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. This extensive deployment stretches from the Baltic Sea in the north to the Black Sea in the south, demonstrating NATO's commitment to defending its member states against potential threats. A cornerstone of NATO's strategic posture is the principle of collective defense, enshrined in Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. This article stipulates that an armed attack against one or more NATO members is considered an attack against all members, obligating them to assist the attacked party. This principle serves as a powerful deterrent against aggression, ensuring that potential adversaries understand that any attack on a NATO member would trigger a unified and robust military response from the entire alliance. The activation of NATO's defense plans and the deployment of additional forces to its eastern flank underscore the alliance's commitment to Article 5. These actions send a clear message that NATO is prepared to defend its members and uphold the principle of collective defense in the face of any threat. While NATO has demonstrated a unified front in its response to the Ukraine crisis, internal dynamics and differing perspectives among member states present ongoing challenges. NATO's 2022 Madrid summit marked a fundamental shift in its deterrence and defense strategy, including the transformation of the NATO response force and the increase in high readiness forces to well over 300,000 troops. Allies also agreed to enhance forward defenses, pre-position equipment and supplies, and upgrade defense plans with pre-assigned forces to defend specific allies. The 2023 Vilnius summit further built on these decisions, with NATO leaders approving new regional defense plans to counter threats from Russia and terrorism. Allies pledged to invest a minimum of 2% of their gross domestic product, GDP, annually on defense, endorsing a defense production plan aimed at accelerating joint procurement, boosting interoperability, and increasing production capacity. Despite these commitments, there are varying perspectives within the alliance regarding the extent and nature of military support to Ukraine. Some Western European countries have expressed caution about deploying ground troops, while Eastern European nations, closer to the conflict and more directly threatened by Russian aggression, have been more supportive of robust intervention. The United States will host the NATO summit from July 9 to 11, 2024, celebrating the alliance's 75th anniversary. This milestone event will address a significant agenda, including reaffirming unwavering support for Ukraine, strengthening NATO's deterrence and defense posture, and collaborating with industry to boost production and the industrial base. Enhancing partnerships within and outside the alliance and ensuring that allies meet their defense investment commitments will be the key focuses. Ukraine will participate in a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council to advance its potential membership, reflecting NATO's strong support for Ukraine and its aspirations for integration. Additionally, the summit will welcome the European Union and Indo-Pacific partners, Australia, Japan, South Korea, and New Zealand, to deepen cooperation and strengthen the vision of peace, security, and prosperity across interconnected regions. Looking ahead, the outcomes of the summit and ongoing geopolitical developments could significantly shape the global landscape. If Ukraine joins NATO, it would dramatically alter the security dynamics in Europe, potentially escalating tensions with Russia, but also reinforcing a more united Western defense. Continued NATO support for Ukraine could enhance its defense capabilities, possibly prolonging the conflict.